Welcome to episode 108 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week I chat with Anthony Everard from the Big Bash League.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who's looking for the next design of @SportsGeek shoes. Yes, his shoes have a Twitter account, Sean Callanan.
Thank you very much, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. You're either doing that on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or my favourite podcast app, Pocket Casts. My name is Sean Callanan, @Sean Callanan on Twitter, and on most other platforms. You can find me on most platforms, LinkedIn, and also on Snapchat. I just sent out a snap of that intro. Did a bit of a Snapchat story behind the scenes of producing this episode. If you're following me on Snapchat, or if you saw that, you now know the time frame of how a podcast comes together. Creating the interview with my guest this week, Anthony Everard, then doing the intros and outros, which I'm doing the very next day. I'll send it off to James, who's going to edit it and put it back, and then it's on to me to produce the show notes and get it out the door, but hopefully that will only take a day or two. But please, if you follow me on Snapchat, send me a snap and tell me to hurry up to get this episode, get each episode out the door. And yes, as DJ Joel said in the opener there, I am looking for the next design of the Sports Geek shoes. If you're not following my shoes on Twitter, @SportsGeekShoes, I'm up to version 6 of Sports Geek shoes and looking for version 7. Whether they're going to be Adidas again, I'm still unsure. What colour scheme? Will I go with some Nikes? Dan Harbison at Nike is pushing me to get a pair of Sports Geek Nikes. So yeah, send in your suggestions on what the next Sports Geek shoe will be. This week, very happy to chat with Anthony Everard from the Big Bash League. Big Bash League currently underway and reaching the pointy end of the season here in Australia. It's 2020 cricket, the T20 cricket, 20 overs per side. It takes about 3 hours. We spoke to Dan Magala back in episode 76 about the Big Bash League, and in BBL 5, this is the 5th season. It's just got bigger and better. So it was really good to catch up with Anthony. I had some time. I worked with the Big Bash in the very first season, did some social media workshops with all the teams before BBL 1, and then those of you who have been following what I've been doing know that I've worked with the Sydney Thunder in their early years through my work with Cricket New South Wales. So been an interesting season. We talk about a few different things around the growth of the league and the importance of their broadcast partner, and then also how they handled the Chris Gale controversy. For those who didn't follow it and didn't see it, there was an interview with Chris Gale and Mel McLaughlin where he was flirting, and it caused a big flare-up on social and in all media, really. So we discussed the behind-the-scenes of how Anthony and his team handled that situation. So here is my interview with Anthony Everard from the Big Bash League. Very happy to kick off 2016 in at the offices of Cricket Australia. I'm here with the head of the Big Bash League, Anthony Everard. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast.
Good to have a chat to you.
So I was just recapping with you. I caught up with Dan Magala, good friend of both of ours, and chatted about his work with the Big Bash. It was around this time last year, episode 76. As you just said, you're head of Big Bash League. Before we dive into that, I want to go into a bit of your background prior to that role. You started at CA, at Cricket Australia, and then you've bounced around with a few other sports. Do you want to take us through what you've done so far?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting reflecting on my first time with CA. Was sort of started around the mid-90s, had a good run here for sort of 7 or 8 years, and then moved on. When my final year at Cricket Australia, T20 didn't exist. It was actually launched as a new product or league the year after that. So I guess a different era, but really enjoyed my time here. That was sort of a golden era on the field for Australian cricket with the War brothers, and I think they set a world record for a consecutive number of Test wins, etc. I then moved on to the World Swimming Champs Organising Committee. That event was in Melbourne in 2007. great experience. I think I was the third person through the door with the organising committee. We finished up with a staff of about 200, and fascinating to see something go from a standing start. You deliver the event, and the day after the event, it's everyone walks out the door. But
very much the same. Talk to Michael Brown with the Asian Cup. You're in those first couple of people organising everything, and then you've got that hectic period of the event itself, and then literally 2 days after, everyone's gone, we're good, see you later.
Exactly. Great experience, and I think to be part of those really intense events that, I think we had 16 days in Melbourne across the 5 aquatic sports was wonderful. I then actually spent a year or so over in Canada, and then returned back to Australia and took up the role as the general manager of the ANZ Netball Championship. So that competition was 1 year old at that point. A lot of great work had been done in setting the league up, and I was there for 3 years. Really, really enjoyed my time there. Obviously spent a lot of time over in New Zealand as well, and fascinating to, I guess, dip my toe in the water of a startup league. A challenger sport in many respects, and learnt an enormous amount across a whole lot of different things outside of marketing and commercial, which is where traditionally my experience has been. And that set me in very good stead to move back into cricket. And I rejoined Cricket Australia in October 2011, which was about 8 weeks before Big Bash as we know it today.
Yeah, and it really was a quick-fire start. Like, I think the league really personifies both the action on the pitch as well from a behind-the-scenes point of view. I was involved with Cricket New South Wales at the time, with the Sixers and the Thunder, doing more work with the Thunder. And Dan described it as Big Bash is not your grandfather's cricket. Cricket league, it's completely different. What were some of the things in those early days that you really tried to do to set the brand and set some of the runway for what Big Bash is today?
Yeah, I think in some respects they were very difficult internal discussions with some of our stakeholders. In other respects, it was actually quite straightforward. And the reason I say that is because the vision, or the overall objective for BBL was very, very clear right from the outset, and it was always going to be about how does cricket attract new and diverse fans and a younger audience. Really, really single-minded about that objective, and that really drove all of our decision-making. It drove our decision-making from, moving away from state teams and brands to city-based franchises as we know them today. It drove the decision-making about the colours that those teams adopted, the names that they adopted, and then as a flow-on from that, everything about the event day experience to the way that they were marketed, etc., etc. So I think, as you pointed out, that didn't necessarily resonate with everyone from an internal stakeholder point of view. We had a reasonably successful state-based T20 comp going as it was. So a lot of people said, well, why the need? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think if we reflect, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, but that competition was kind of ticking over at about 14, average crowds of 14, 15,000, and we've obviously seen the quantum leap that we've taken with the launch of BBL in its current form. So always interesting when it's like any business, when you launch a new business from scratch, always have some challenges. But I certainly think one of the key strengths of BBL has been having that really, really clear vision from the outset and sticking to our guns and making sure that we consistently apply that through everything we do.
And Channel 10 as a partner, a couple of seasons in, they came on board telecasting every match live in lounge rooms around Australia, and really having fun with the concept, staying on that entertainment brand. I think the Adelaide match the other day, Adam Gilchrist opened up standing on the roof of Adelaide Stadium and things like that. How much has the partnership with 10 helped the growth from a Big Bash League perspective?
Oh, it's helped us enormously, and I think we forget. Fox Sports did a great job in the first couple of years, and our ratings on Fox were fantastic. We had, I think, in the first year of Big Bash, we had 3 of the top 10 ever highest rating sporting events on Fox Sports. But the challenge with Fox Sports was that the penetration within Australia was limited, and even our biggest games, we were only ever reaching a maximum of 30% of the population. So for a brand or a product whose main purpose in life was to try and attract new audiences, there were some limitations in the partnership with Fox. We then moved across to 10, and a few things happened. I think often you need a bit of luck with when you're launching a new business or a new league, and the move to Channel 10 coincided with Australia winning the Ashes that year. We'd won the Ashes by the third test, you might recall, over in Perth, and a week later, a lot of people were seeing BBL for the first time on Channel 10, and we almost became the after party for the Ashes series, and I think that played a big role in our success. Having said that, one of the first conversations we had with 10 when we did the deal was, all right, how are we going to go about this? It was a bit of a leap of faith for both of us because they had no history at all in broadcasting cricket. They had a lot of pressure on them because you've got, Wide World of Sports who have done such a wonderful job for decades. Yep. And I think 10 were smart. They realised pretty early, we've got to do this differently. If we try and do what Wide World of Sports does, we can't win because they've got legends, icons of the sport that they've built, their brands and equity over an extended period. So we were pleased to hear them say that. And we said, well, we've got a few ideas because funnily enough, BBL is all about doing things differently as well. We're all about younger audiences and therefore how can you work with us to bring that to life? And to give you an example, one of the first conversations we had was we said, look, a BBL game is a fantastic live experience, great when you're actually sitting in the stands, but that doesn't always come through the broadcast. So we said to them, if nothing else, in between showing the great action on the field, can you actually cut away and just show all the smiling faces of the little boys and girls in the crowd? And that's a great advertisement for buying a ticket and coming along. So they did that. And look, that was 3 years ago now, and they've just taken it to a whole new level, and probably culminating this year when you look at the Backyard Legends competition that they've run through the broadcast. It just ticks every box for us in positioning cricket as a fun, really genuine sport that anyone can play, boys and girls, we couldn't be happier with the partnership.
So that leads me to what you were just saying there about connecting the game with younger kids, that younger demographic, but then also how Big Bash is sort of a strategy for getting more kids playing cricket, getting them involved, and getting them wanting to play cricket. How is things like the Big Bash connected to T20 Blast and getting more kids, playing on a regular basis?
Yeah, well, I think you called it out there. So T20 Blast is in many respects mini Big Bash, and cricket has had some challenges, I guess, in the past, in the sense that at a junior level, what we were asking kids to get involved in really was not that dissimilar to senior elite cricket. White clothing, standing out in the field for extended periods of time, and really, the skills for young kids don't always translate to a positive experience. You could have the poor kid who stands down at fine leg and doesn't touch the ball for 3 hours. So, I think what we've done is adapted a form of cricket for younger kids, and T20 Blast is really, I guess, the stepping stone between Kanga cricket as we used to know it, which was all about skills, learning how to just hold the bat and catch, and then club cricket. And it's a big step to go from just learning skills into playing a proper game. T20 Blast is that middle ground, I guess, and it takes a lot of the elements of BBL and translates that into the community and the school grounds. So coloured clothing, there's music, everyone gets a bat, everyone gets a bowl, and we've seen some fantastic growth in the last couple of years in T20 Blast around the country.
And so one of the things, obviously we do a lot at Sports Geek is the digital side of things. So how do you take the TV viewers that are engaged, especially the younger ones, and engage them on digital platforms or apps or websites to get them engaged? Because you can't just go and say, we're going to go and reach them on Facebook because, under 13 shouldn't be on Facebook. So how do you use digital to connect with those kids? Because in 5-10 years' time, that you would hope that they are Stars members, Sixers members, Scorchers members, and rusted on fans that we see in the the AFL and the NRL, which is where Big Bash is wanting to head.
Yeah, look, I think our website still plays a really big role, and we actually relaunched our website this year. For the last couple of years, it's kind of looked like a cricket website, which doesn't really work for Big Bash. It's got to be more than that. It's got to have broader appeal. So that still plays a really important role, and I think if you look at the nature of our season, and this, the last 4 weeks has been a great example. There's so much going on in any given BBL game. It provides fantastic highlights that we can actually then promote that kids get on board. So last night, we saw Chris Lynn hitting 5 sixes in a row. That's something that goes viral pretty quickly. And we've seen a number of other on-field activities. I think our biggest video view this year has been Dan Christian hitting the ball onto the roof.
Yep.
And I could reel off a heap of others.
So just for people who are listening, I mean, I know our UK audience or listeners know Big Bash, know cricket, but some context for the people in the US. Chris Lynn last night faced a bowler, 6 balls in and over. The first ball, nothing happened, and for the next 5 consecutive balls, he hit it over the fence for 6 runs, which is effectively 5 home runs in a row. If you're talking about baseball, which you don't even see in the home run derby that they have at the All-Star game, and it was real tune in moment. Like, I was watching and tweet. And if you weren't watching and you saw it on the social, you would tune it in. And I thought 10 did a really good job where they said, no, we're not going to an ad because we're going to replay them all right here and then to get people involved.
Yeah, it's spot on. And as I said, I think there are a number of other on-field highlights that we could talk about. One of the other highlights this year, and it sort of sums up the weird and wacky world of Big Bash League, was a couple of weeks ago at the MCG, the young 10-year-old boy sitting in the crowd eating a watermelon. And these are things that we don't really cover in our planning meetings at the start of the season, but absolutely hilarious. 10 obviously captured the footage, and that goes viral as well. So I think it's wonderful to have a broadcaster who can actually identify those moments, and then actually have the facilities within Cricket Australia and our in-house digital team to actually package those up and feed them out. And I think, again, it's all about broadening the appeal beyond just the cricket, and that, I think, is a big part of actually appealing to that younger audience.
Yes, I'm sure people would have seen Watermelon Boy trending. I think it was trending worldwide by the end of the match, and young Tony Shebeki from SEN's young son was eating the whole watermelon. Absolutely cracker. The other thing from this season was a bit of controversy around Chris Gale, an interview he had with Mel McLaughlin, where he was flirting with Mel and asked her out and said, "Don't blush, baby." And again, it was something that the reaction to it was as quick as the game itself, and there wasn't any time to wait. In a traditional sense, you would wait till 11 o'clock the next day. There'd be a press statement or whatever, but in this social media age, it just blew up, really quick. Do you want to take us through a little bit of, as much as you can, on behind the scenes mechanics and when that happens, and sort of what your role is in that and what you did to respond? Yeah,
sure. I think I was in Hobart that night myself, and I wasn't in front of a TV. I was sitting elsewhere watching the game, and so I obviously didn't see it happen on air. What did happen though is my phone lit up like a Christmas tree pretty quickly, and my first reaction was, Chris Gale's said something silly. I then made my way to a TV and actually saw what he said, and I think we realised pretty quickly that this was going to become a big issue. Again, it wasn't so much the words he said. There was nothing in the words. It was the context in terms of where he said them, and just completely inappropriate, where you've got a professional journalist live on air and putting her in such an uncomfortable position. So, in many respects, it wasn't a difficult one for us. It was pretty black and white. We needed to act quickly. I jumped on the phone to our communications team, who were back in Melbourne, and we agreed that we needed to issue a statement that night, which we did. And I guess that's where technology can certainly work for you in those instances where you can actually get something onto the public record very easily and effectively. I then met with Chris the next morning at the hotel and explained to him how disappointed we were. The context of that discussion, it wasn't ranting and raving. I was just explaining we just worked so hard over such a long period to try and position the BBL as a family-friendly entertainment option targeted at kids. And I said to Chris, he must know that. When he walks out into the middle and he looks back out over the fence, all he sees is little boys smiling back at him. So just really disappointed, and we had some really positive momentum going at that point, and this just became a distraction. So off the back of that, the Renegades met that afternoon, felt that it was appropriate to sanction him, and they announced that there would be a $10,000 fine. it certainly gained quite a bit of traction in terms of, obviously outside of sports media. And it was, it's interesting that time of year. I think it was at the early January, not much going on, and it took on a life of its own. So.
Well, and that's the thing. There's reports on the social media reaction of a report that happens. So,
that's right, yeah.
and if you don't at least get your statement out there, on the night, and that's where I think, even if it was as simple as you writing it on a note, snapshotting the note and tweeting that note, you have to be, agile enough to do that, because, 12 hours in internet hours is just far too long to let that something run. And you've got people piling in from both sides, really contentious issue, people supporting Chris Gale and people, not condoning what he's doing. And, that conversation is always going to happen. And so as a body, you've got to put your position in and pretty much let it settle down in its own time. And I think when you're in a low news cycle and there's nothing out, then newspapers, TV, everyone's going to pick it up for a while. And it was a 4 or 5 a day story.
Yeah, it was. I think, in some respects, the advantage for us was that there was really no ambiguity on the night around our position. Yeah. So it's not like we needed to convene internally and debate, how do we feel about this? We knew very quickly that we felt strongly about how inappropriate it was in terms of the context of those comments. So there's no reason why we couldn't get something out that night. And what that gave us a position to do was having, I guess, put that stake in the ground the night before. We then just kept coming back to that position over the next few days. But as I said, that didn't stop a variety of people from all walks of life having very, very strong opinions about it. And I guess that's the world we live in, isn't it?
It is. Chatting as we got here, we're in the Gabba meeting room here at Cricket Australia. You said this is effectively it's not a day off. You're obviously work, but there's no Big Bash game. Talk to us about just the hectic schedule that Big Bash offers, because there's effectively a game a night almost for 40 days.
Yeah, so we've got 35 games in 39 days. Yep. We had Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and then today's a rare day with a one-day international up at the Gabba where we don't play. So. Yeah, it's a funny old season. It's a short season, but you certainly don't feel like it's a short season by the time you get to the end.
No, and that's the thing. It's what people don't realise is from the team's point of view, like they're really running on really lean teams. Like the resources behind the Big Bash teams both from the operational side, but also, the content, the digital and the media teams are super lean. They're not at the same level of a AFL or NRL team. So, and it is a punishing schedule to, even you've got your 4 home games and your 4 away games, but it's go, which sort of leads to the point there's been some, again, discussion in the media and things like that. Is there an opportunity for Big Bash for an expansion point of view, either from a length, a longer season, or from a more teams point of view? Is that something that is on the radar?
Yeah, I think it is. If you had have asked me that a year ago, I would have said no. We're just finishing our 5th season now, so in some respects, we still consider ourselves in establishment phase. I mean, this is not a race. We don't need to get to the top of the mountain with a certain year in mind. I guess the thing for us is any discussions around growth and whatever form that takes, whether that's new teams or more games, again needs to come back to that objective I mentioned at the start about does it attract new fans and diversify our audience. We're not going to play more games for the sake of more content, and I think that's where BBL is perhaps a little bit different. A lot of sports, both within Australia and around the world, it is all about the dollar and maximising financial returns, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But BBL is a little bit different in the sense that first and foremost, our objective is about customer acquisition, and I guess we had an interesting discussion with our board late last year as we just started a discussion around growth, and where we ended up was if we do a good job in the customer acquisition space and bringing new fans to the game, the financial returns will come. And I think we've seen that this year. So it's revenue as an outcome rather than a priority as such. So, so we'll obviously get through the next couple of weeks in finishing off BBL 05, and really we won't have much of a break at all before we start giving thought to a growth strategy. And as you'd appreciate, whether it's BBL 6 or 7 or beyond, there's a fairly long lead time in introducing these things. You can't just flick a switch and either bring in a new team or even play more games. So we'll be having that discussion probably around mid-Feb onwards, I would say.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, you're coming from a really strong base. The crowds this year are way up. I'm sure there's a lot of sports marketers that are listening that would have liked to have had the problem that you had at the MCG when the Stars and the Renegades played. I think there was estimates of 50,000 and another 30,000 turned up, which caused problems in people getting in. But they're the sort of problems that most sports marketers want. In getting them in, and then you've got the other challenge of like you said, it's not easy just to add another franchise in and expect that to have the same results as the original one. So all those things to take and consider.
Yeah, I think we've got a formula that works pretty well now, and that's no coincidence. We've given a lot of thought to what are the ingredients we need to put into a BBL season to generate the results we have, and. If you look at the timing of our season, it's not coincidental that we pretty much start when the school holidays commence, and the BBL final next weekend largely coincides when school goes back. We spend a lot of time almost hand-picking each of our 35 fixtures and making sure that they're played in the right night on the right market, all with the objective of making it as accessible as possible for families. That's the simplicity of it. So yeah, when we think about growth opportunities, it all needs to fit with that strategy. And the questions for us are, if we play more games, do we move outside that school holiday window, and what does that mean for us? Are there opportunities, I guess, to play more games in a vertical sense rather than horizontal? And we tried a couple of different time slots this year that have worked quite well. We'll see another one of those tomorrow night when the Sixers take on the Thunder at the SCG, and that's a 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. game. We've then got a game in Perth that follows that, 9 p.m. till midnight on the eastern seaboard, but 6 till 9 local time. So we're fortunate that we can play around with some of the different time zones. We've played a twilight game, 4 till 7, which has worked really well, both attendance-wise and ratings. So, yeah, it's exciting. You live and learn. You try different things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. But, yeah, we've got a really concentrated period to do that.
Exactly. You've only got, Channel 10's only got the one channel, and so It is funny that Big Bash is out there as a 3-hour game. You consume it all in once, and it's different to the one-day game. Yet now the appetite is there that people want to watch 2 games in a row, which is the reason it came in the first place. One of the things early on was sort of on the game plan was private ownership for all the franchises, and it didn't happen in the first couple of years. Greg Dyer just recently in the news said, should that be revisited? Is that something that the Big Bash should be looking at? Is that something that you're looking at potentially down the track, or are you pretty comfortable with the current model?
We're very comfortable with the current model, and it's not on the radar in terms of considerations for us at the moment. And again, it simply comes back to the fact that we're not about maximising the financial return from Big Bash, in the short to medium term. I think they're much easier discussions for us to have with BBL clubs and state cricket associations around investing into the growth of the game.
Yep.
What are the right decisions that we need to be making at the moment that will give us the best opportunity to bring that new fan base along? And I think as soon as you bring private investors to the table who are there potentially with a different agenda, you do end up with conflict of interest, and it does muddy the waters. So, look, cricket is fortunate at the moment that we don't necessarily need that capital injection via the BBL. We obviously have got the international game as well, which generates significant financial returns, which certainly in the first couple of years really did underwrite the BBL while it's in its establishment phase.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At the moment, for those who don't know, all the BBL franchises are managed effectively by the state organising bodies in each state from a cricket point of view. So, yeah, they can have that objective, which one of their objectives is to get more people playing cricket, so they can use Big Bash as a vehicle for that.
They can, and I also think last year was the first year that all of our clubs actually made a profit, and that will be the case this year as well. The state associations are not-for-profit organisations, so every dollar of profit that a BBL club makes then goes back into either running that club or as an investment into grassroots cricket. So I think that's a model that we're reluctant to mess with too much.
Terrific. I'm what I want to do this. I've got the Sports Geek Starting 5. It's a new addition to the Sports Geek podcast. There's 5 quick questions that hopefully you should be able to answer, that I'm going to be firing away to every guest this year. Can you remember the first sports event you attended?
I think it was a Australia-West Indies test match at the SCG, and I went with my dad, sat in the sun for 8 hours. I think Booney it was either century or might have made a double century.
Yep. Around what year? What was the Windies lineup looking like?
It was early 80s. It was when they were at their prime. So
Michael Holding and Malcolm Marshall steaming in.
Clive Lloyd, absolutely. Yep, the golden era of West Indies cricket.
Yep. And one for the foodies. What's your favourite food consumed at a sports event?
That is a good question. Probably have to think back to my time over in the US. They do food very well.
Yes, they do.
At sporting events. It would have been a hot dog of a impressive variety at the LA Dodgers.
Yeah, Dodger dog, famous worldwide.
Fully loaded.
Yes, exactly. So the app that you open on your phone first thing in the morning?
It would be, this time of year, it would be Twitter.
Yep.
To see what everyone is talking about from around the world from last night's BBL game.
And if you were to suggest for Sports Geek Podcast listeners, is there someone that you think they should be following online and why?
In a cricket context, in a T20 context, there's a gentleman by the name of Freddie Wild. He's a young UK-based journalist who covers the business of T20 from around the world. And he's fantastic in terms of reflecting on the evolution of cricket as a sport and where T20 fits into that. Freddie Wild would be someone I'd recommend.
I will put Freddie Wild's links in the show notes. And lastly, if you were giving away a social media MVP to a specific platform, which platform would you give the MVP
to? I'm going to show my age here. I don't branch out too far from Twitter and Facebook. I think Twitter is still probably my favourite. I think the ability to gather information from all around the world on particular topics in a really efficient way. I think Twitter is wonderful. You don't have time to sift through newspapers, and I find I learn a lot about articles that are written about BBL through the people that I follow on Twitter.
Yep, very good. And where can people find and follow you on any platform that you're using?
I think Twitter would be the best one. So Big Bash League HQ is my handle, and you get all the behind the scenes action from BBL.
Well, Anthony, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and best of luck for the rest of the season and the upcoming finals. And speak to you soon.
Good on you. Thanks for your time.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Anthony Everard. Please send him a tweet. He is very active on Twitter at Big Bash League HQ. Send him a tweet. Tell him you listened to the podcast and give him your thoughts on the Big Bash League and what they've been doing both from a digital point of view, what the broadcast point of view, and whether you've attended a game or whether you've been following it online. Hope you enjoyed the starting 5 questions. I'm going to be firing those at every single guest going forward. So if you want to do a little bit of homework as a guest, think about those questions. But for you as listeners, send me what's your social media platform. Anthony picked Twitter there as his go-to platform from a social media point of view. What's yours? Anthony did ask me once we turned off the recording what mine is. Mine's still Facebook, just for the ability to target and get business results out of it. As you've heard earlier, had some really big success selling tickets with the Asian Cup this time last year, and it's pretty much why I've started Chunky Media to sort of offer the same services in that social sales capacity outside of the world of sports. So for me, the targeting and the advertising capability of Facebook really puts it as the social MVP, and also just the broad reach. The fact that there are so many people using Facebook every single day, it does give it that edge if I'm going to start awarding a social MVP. As I said earlier, that social MVP may change. I'm starting to use Snapchat a lot more, and I am seeing more and more teams using Snapchat in innovative ways. And so my goal this year is to produce a Snapchat story every day for 2016. So not just a snap, not just a, hey, here's what I'm doing, but try to provide a little bit of a story behind the scenes of what I'm doing, or a bit of commentary on what's happening by using Snapchat video. And for me, video's never been a strong suit. I don't mind the fact that there's no pictures around my podcast. I've had people say, make the podcast a video podcast. Video's not a format that comes natural to me, but that's what I'm going to try with Snapchat. And enjoying it so far, getting a few people answering the questions and sending some snaps back and things like that. So I'm going to use it as a platform for that, and also to take some feedback of the podcast and share a little bit behind the scenes of the podcast, like I've done today. If you were able to catch that Snapchat story around my interview with Anthony and then this recording. So that's it for this week's episode. A quick shout out. Caught up with Christine Stoffel from Seat last week. They have now got there's a call out for Seat interns. So if you want to work in the world of sports business, you're a current college student, either in London or in Vegas, or able to get to Vegas in July. Seat Intern is currently taking applications to become an intern at either Seat London in April or Seat 2016 in Las Vegas. Simply go to seatconsortium.com/seatintern to apply. And I can tell you right now, if you say you've listened to a lot of the Sports Geek episodes, you'll probably get a bit of a leg up. And I can only talk from experience. Reese, my son's been an intern at Seat for the last 3 years. He's found the experience valuable, and some of the kids that are going through there have done really well in getting themselves a leg up in the industry. And the thing is, you will meet someone from nearly every single pro team that you can imagine. So from the networking opportunities there are endless, and it's really up to you to make that yours. So if you want to work at Seat and meet a lot of really great people, and you're currently in university, I highly suggest it. So go to seatconsortium.com/seatintern. I look forward to meeting you there. Send me a tweet if you want a tip or some guidance on applying. Sounds of the game this week brought back memories for me. I saw this on Russell Scobetti's Instagram feed. He was at the National Championship game where Alabama won again. Brought back memories for me because in the very first Sports Geek trip for me was back in 2010. January 2010, when I was in LA and went out to the Rose Bowl to check out the fan activations and check out what was being done at the game. Wasn't expecting to get a ticket, and on the way back to the car, someone said, "Yeah, there's still tickets available." So I then purchased a ticket at will call and ended up sitting practically in the end zone right behind the Texas Longhorns band. Had an absolute ball. Unfortunately, the Longhorns did not win. I was on the side of the Longhorns, and Alabama and Nick Saban got the victory and started pretty much his dynasty in Alabama. So that's the sounds of the game. So tune in for that. Thank you for Russell for sharing that on his Instagram. And the same goes. I've got a few sounds of the game in the queue now. Thank you to Richard Clark for sending some through. Please either tag me in an Instagram video post or simply send me an email. Sean@sportsgeekhq.com will find me. One more thing. Really enjoying the conversation that's starting to form in our Slack community. If you want to have a trial of Slack and see what it is, how it works. I'm using Slack across multiple businesses now. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack to apply. If you work in sports business, you're more than happy to join in. We've got some conversations happening on social activations, some campaigns, and just general great articles that we're reading, and just general convo around the sports business. So if you want to test out Slack, simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. Until next time, this has been episode 108. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/108. Anthony Everard at Big Bash League has been my guest this week. Please send a tweet, post it on your LinkedIn, And if you wouldn't mind leaving an iTunes review if you've listened to this episode or any other episodes of the podcast, I really do appreciate it. A big shout out to Baz, who gave the recent episode a plug all the way in Holland. I expect to see a lot of Dutch iTunes reviews coming in soon. So thank you very much, Baz, on the fan engagement blog. I didn't bother putting Google Translate. I trust what you said in Dutch was complimentary. Until next week, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.
Like the Sports Geek Podcast? Find us on Facebook.com/SportsGeek. Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at SportsGeekHQ.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to SportsGeekHQ.com/iTunes.